Welcome to the Life You're Made For with me, Dr. Heather Penny. We're going to be having conversations that talk about us spiraling up versus spiraling down, because we all want to be living lives that are about thriving, not just surviving. This is the life you're made for. So let's get going. Hello, Mike. It's so good to have you on my show today.
Hi, Heather. How you doing? I'm so glad to be here. Thank you.
Oh, we've had so much fun chatting that I said, please come on my show. And for our listeners, I have Mike Liguori here on the show today, and I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about who he is and what he does.
Yeah. Well, first off, I think we just got to identify that you and I are become such good friends now because we were playing phone tag this morning and trying to get on the same page. I'm so glad we did.
Yeah. We stopped having the conversation of who's on first, who's on second, and somehow we both got home together.
Yeah, I know. I was like, who's calling me right now? And then I was like, oh, podcast. So I'm glad we got to do this, Heather.
Yes. Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you for being here.
Well, where do I start? I won't start in childhood to just save everybody's time because we'll save that for another episode. But I'm Mike Liguori. I am a podcast strategist, and my mission is to help you create podcasts, create your brand, and help you monetize your brand and help the people that you want to serve. My journey started with storytelling, which by trade, I'm a writer. It started in 2002 when I was a senior in high school. When 9/11 happened, actually 2001, I was sitting in chemistry class and watched the two towers go down.
Wow.
And it was the first time in my life that I had actually felt rage. I had felt anger, and I had felt complete, utter revenge. And I decided in that moment in time, I wasn't going to go to college because my dream growing up as a white Italian Catholic was to go play football at Notre Dame. My favorite movie as a kid was Rudy.
Rudy, yes.
Yeah, I watched. I lived that dream.
Yes.
And I was just so mad that I remember going to the recruiter's office, and there was a line out the door of men and women who were ready to answer the call to serve during that time period. And so I felt a sense of belonging. I felt like, yeah, we're America, like revenge. But at the same time, I felt like I was doing something that was so much bigger than myself that I couldn't really wrap my head around it at that time. I was 18 years old. It was like 2 months before my 18th birthday. So I ended up signing up, decided not to go pursue college and go live the Rudy Rudiger dream. And I ended up doing 2 tours in Iraq. The first tour that I did in 2004 to 2005 was about 8 months. And then I went back 3 months later and did a second tour for 7 months. So I did a total of 15 months overseas in Iraq. I was a truck driver. So I drove supply convoys all over the Al Anbar province and saw some things that I was not prepared for. And the reason why I bring that up, when you see combat, when you see violence, when you see another group of people who do not know you, have no context to who you are, want to kill you and want to take your life, all because of a uniform that you're wearing and what you stand for in your country, it's unfathomable. It really is. And I couldn't even still understand. I still thought I was doing the right thing. So even in the throes of this combat and this horrific events, I'm like, I'm still doing the right thing. I'm still doing the right thing. And the military does an amazing job of making sure that they take out the components of your humanity out in order for you to survive in combat and in battle. And they do a great job of teaching you that type of aggression that you need to survive. What they don't do a good job of is putting those pieces back in. And so my journey back home after 2 successful tours of duty was a third tour that I didn't know who I was, where I was, and somehow I had made it out of a combat zone and was ended up at junior college with a bunch of people I didn't know, mostly freshman kids that were 4 years older than me, who had never seen anything outside of the Bay Area. I was born and raised in the Bay Area. And I felt so lost that I kept asking myself, why is it that I feel like I don't belong here? And that became that day specifically, or this day, I should actually mention, this day specifically in 2007, it was September. And I just had finished my freshman year the previous spring.
Mm.
And in the fall of my sophomore year, everything was going great. And I was like, okay, maybe I'm finding my footing. And I got a letter in the mail sent to my dad. And my dad said, "You got a letter from the US government. Do you want me to read it?" And I'm like, yeah, maybe it's just like an extra paycheck they decided to send me as a farewell gift after I did 4 years. Probably
That
not.
sounds like the government.
Yeah, right. I'm like, oh, maybe it's a tax return, from 5 years
Yes.
ago. Well, what I heard was that the Bush administration at the time was executing a troop surge. They were wanting
Mm.
to reactivate men and women who had finished their tours, who had finished their
Mm.
service, and asking them to come back up and join arms to go back to Iraq and
Mm.
quote, solidify things. For those of you who can see me, air quotes.
Mhm.
And I had a panic attack,
Mm.
mental breakdown on campus. I like
Mm.
screamed, I yelled. I remember this like yesterday. I was just in full panic, and I drove back home to my mom's house where I was living at the time. And as I got there, I locked the door, and that day began my healing journey, because it was the
Mm.
day I had realized that I was so scared and I was so afraid and I was so frightened to go back to combat that I knew I was going to die if I went
Mm.
back.
Mm.
And a couple weeks later, I decided that it was time for me to go see somebody. And I went down to the VA hospital in Palo Alto. And after being explained to a bunch of doctors, or having my symptoms and how I was acting, it was a very manic thing. It was really wild now that I think about it, Heather.
Mm.
They uttered the words and the acronym PTSD,
Mm.
post traumatic stress disorder. Do you know what that is? And I said, I have no clue. And they said, well, it's incurable and you're going to have it for the rest of your life. But with proper treatment, you can somehow manage.
Mm.
And that began a 10-15 year journey to find the ability to learn what it truly means to love yourself, to love other people, and to have grace for yourself.
Mm. My
So
goodness.
I know that was a long-winded intro, but I felt called to share that with you.
That is beautiful. And honestly, it's a gift. Thank you so much, Mike.
Mm.
And, my latest book is on gray space. I had
Yeah.
no idea you're going to share all this, but
Neither did I.
it's meant to be,
Yes,
because
that's right.
I immediately resonated with your message, and I'm so grateful. Let me just first start there. Thank you for serving. I
My
know
honor.
freedom does
Thank you.
not come free.
Mm.
So I thank everyone who serves. But I guess I want to start there. Grace, my latest book is Grace Space, and I'm talking about that, but grace is such a big word.
Yes.
How would you define grace and how it showed up for you personally in your own life?
I define grace as the ability to love yourself through all aspects and conditions
Mm.
of everyday life. And
Mm.
before you can give grace to somebody else, you have to give grace to yourself.
Mm.
Before you can love somebody else wholeheartedly,
Mhm.
unconditionally, you have to be able to do that to yourself. I
Mm.
think most of us look at love and see love on a subconscious level, mostly from the lens of conditional.
Mhm.
If you do this for me or I do this for you, I have gained your love. I've achieved your love. I now have it. Or it's, if I make enough money, will you still love me? And what I feel as though, in terms of grace in my journey specifically, was learning that lesson of trying to vie for people's attention. Because going back to my military story, when I got out, I didn't know who I was. So naturally, I am trying to find every single way possible to getting to people's attention, especially when you come back home from a war that a majority of the country does not agree with. So you're not
Mm.
getting love from the American public. Sure, you're getting people who will honor and like appreciate your service. But if you were to ask people who were around at that time and were
Mhm.
aware of what's going on, did you agree with the Iraq war? A majority of people are going to say no.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
imagine being a young man who
Mm-hmm.
thinks they're doing the right thing to come home and go, thank you for your service, but you participated in a messed up war.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you go and do that?
Mm-hmm.
Very hard to have
Mm-hmm.
grace or even know what that is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for a lot of us, it's really difficult to give grace to others because we don't know how to love ourselves through the process of the downtimes and the things that are revealed to us through the healing practices that we do, whether it's meditation, sound healing, yoga, you name it, or even coaching.
Mm-hmm.
It's those parts of ourselves get revealed to us and we immediately go, gross. Oh, I don't
Mm-hmm.
feel good. I don't like this part of myself.
Mm-hmm.
When in actuality, that's such a unique opportunity for us to be
Mm-hmm.
able to say, wow, I'm feeling this wound coming up for me. This is the time for me now to practice grace, to practice love by saying, Mike, you're okay by not being okay,
Mm-hmm.
but it'll
Mm-hmm.
get better for you. And
Mm-hmm.
you just ride the wave. And can you
Mm.
love yourself through that? And that's my definition of grace. That's 15 years in the making, and I'm still working on the definition.
Oh, aren't we all?
Yeah.
You know, my book has 7 practices, and as you're talking, I'm thinking of the 7th practice. It's how I close down the book. And it's trust versus fear.
Mm.
And as I'm listening to you talk and creating a space of grace internally for
Mm.
yourself in order to invite other people into that, I love what you said earlier. You have to start within.
Yep.
And that's truly, I think, the definition of authenticity, right? We don't tell people what we're doing, we just show them.
Mhm.
We
Yeah.
become that, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And so I think as you stepped into this idea of loving yourself, it makes me think of trust versus fear. I think you had to learn how to step into trusting yourself, trusting all the good and the bad pieces, right?
Mhm.
What we label bad, I'm going to put that in air quotes because is it really bad? We just don't
Yeah.
like it. But learn how to trust that process, trust yourself, and also rejecting the fear that fill in the blank. You're not enough. You're
Mhm.
unlovable. You're not going to recover from this. Nobody will love you. You know, these awful fears that we have. So I guess as I think about that, I wanted to put that on the table and get some of your thoughts on that.
Yeah. And I love what you said too about trust versus fear. Something I learned over the weekend. I was at a mastermind group, and one of the speaker there was really amazing. Gentleman named Dean Graziosi, who happens to be Tony Robbins' business partner.
Mm,
And I had followed Dean online, and I loved his content. But when you get in proximity with these people, there's a presence and an energy to them. And Dean had said something, and I'm pretty much paraphrasing at this point. He said, "But all problems in your life come down to two problems.
mm,
And the first problem is I'm not worthy, which is rejection and in brackets,
mm-hmm,
and I'm not lovable."
mm,
And if you really think about that, those two problems at its core, you could trace it out to entrepreneurship. Um,
mm,
Nobody's buying from me,
mm-hmm,
so I must not be good at this. And if I'm not good at this, that means I'm not worthy, because I'm
mm,
getting rejected every single day doing my cold calls. For those of you out there who are listening and watching this, if you're in that type of game, it
mm-hmm,
could be very challenging. It could be very hard. And then I'm not lovable.
mm, mm,
Think how many times we have looked at ourselves through the lens of, I did something bad, or I'm guilty of this, or I have shame around this. And we
mm-hmm,
label it bad and we vilify it. And what happens is we immediately separate ourselves
mm-hmm,
and that part of us from ever having grace and from ever being loved on. We're
mm-hmm.
like, I'm great 80% of the time, but this 20% over here is so bad, Heather,
Mm-hmm.
that I'm just going to that's the bad part of me.
Mm-hmm.
And I love
Mm-hmm.
how you said we label and we put air quotes on things.
Mm-hmm.
And my perspective on this is that a lot of what I teach with clients, and I teach in the podcasting realm, and I also do with my one-on-one clients, is that we talk about the concept of non-duality.
Mm-hmm.
That as long as we create separation, there will always be constraint within us and there will always be restriction within us and in our lives because we are creating this illusion that we have to make a choice in order for us to proceed and move forward.
Mm.
When you embody and embrace the concept of non-duality, the experience then does not become separate, but it is of the exact same experience. I can trust and be scared.
Mm.
I can have grace and compassion for myself, but also want to improve other aspects of myself and
Mm-hmm.
progress. It is
Mm-hmm.
not I need to progress and I screwed up or I'm jacked up or I messed up and then
Mm-hmm.
I just throw in the towel over there and just love on myself. That's not viable in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
To truly have self-love and to truly have grace for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It is all encompassing. It is non-duality. It is both experience are on a spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
And you can experience both of the feelings. You can be scared and you can trust it's going to work out.
Mm-hmm.
I think speaking of which, one of my favorite definitions of courage is being scared and doing it anyway.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
That's a duality.
Yeah.
It's a non-duality right there. It
Mm-hmm.
is the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's really important for us to understand that trust versus fear is part of the same experience.
Mm.
And if we label things and we don't
Mm-hmm.
give ourselves the opportunity to honor both of the experiences we're having at the same time, and they're also part of our human experience,
Mm-hmm.
we will always create restriction, constraint in our lives if we always create separation of the feelings and emotions and experiences that we have.
Gosh, I love that. Okay, I've got an example coming to my mind
Yeah, please
personally.
do it. Yeah.
I've got a 19-year-old and a 21-year-old, and both of them, I'm recently empty nest. And a lot of people are asking me, how are you doing? How are you doing? I'm like, depends when you catch me kind of feeling.
Mm,
But when I get really still and think about how I'm doing both grieving and excitement.
yeah.
I'm holding both. And I think to your point, that's what's so confusing. The world tells us you got to just be sad or you got to just be happy. And I'm like, I literally am both. My child and my children who I adore have left the nest.
Yeah.
And I'm grieving that. I am so excited because they're leaving it well and they are launching and they're making so many great decisions. And I am both in the same nanosecond. I am feeling both the grief and just the excitement and the joy of that. And I think that's what I've seen people get stuck in. Like they're swinging back and forth to either extreme, thinking they have to commit. But I love what you said. Even giving grace to ourselves is giving us the permission to hold both because we have the capacity to do that. And
Right.
it's what I think of as staying integrated, is being able to hold on to both and not get stuck in one or the other, not get stuck in and I'm seeing some of my peers getting stuck in the grief. And I'm like, we don't want them at 3 years old again. We don't want them at 8 years old again. We don't want those years back. This is like the natural progression. Nor do we want to act like this is so easy and it's not a problem. And I'm just super happy about everything. I'm seeing that the uncomfortableness of people staying in that non-duality. And I love that you brought it up because that's where we do need that grace, isn't it?
Yes. And it's also important for us to think less of as good or bad
Mm,
and positive and negative when it comes to consequences.
mm,
Because if you're listening to this and you're in America, it's all about production, achievement, stack what you can, be recognizable, be somebody. It's what makes our country great. And it's also what makes our country very difficult
mm-hmm,
at the same time. Again, non duality. We're
mm-hmm,
great and we're also very challenging for a
mm-hmm,
lot of people. When we label our feelings and emotions from the lens of good and bad, separation is created. What
mm-hmm,
I love to do for me and what's helped me in my journey, and still I'm on this journey, everybody. Like
mm.
I am there, I am not, I am not a monk sitting on top of the mountain telling you I've achieved enlightenment. Far
Right.
from it.
Yeah. Neither
But
am I.
yeah, right. No, and I don't want that, right?
Yeah.
But for me, what I have found is if I remove the labels of good and bad,
Mm,
and I focus more on the alignment, then what it does is the feelings and the emotions for me can be held And then I can process and choose how I wish to proceed forward. This is not an eradication of, all right, Heather, you got 5 minutes for grief and then like move the F on. No, you can't do that. Or Heather, you only have 10 minutes to celebrate your wins and then you got to move on.
Yeah.
Maybe in some professions that works. If you're, a football fan, there's a story about Nick Saban, who recently retired from the University of Alabama, that he would win the championships, and he won, I think, like 5 national championships. And while he was there, and he would say, I'd give myself 24 to 48 hours to enjoy the win celebration. And then he says, and then I go back to work. Very cool. Understand that. Maybe not for me. I'm going to take a lot longer for 24, 48 hours if we won the national championship, right?
I'm going to take that one to my grave, Mike.
Yeah, right. I'm going to enjoy it, right? Like what's what, and I think the most important thing, what I loved about it is that he didn't label it. It was the longer term vision was the process, was the journey. So he allowed himself the celebration of the wins and also embodied the journey that like, it's not done yet, but I am going to just be where I'm at right now and celebrate that. Because he had alignment with his working goals. So if you look at your feelings, and if you're listening to this right now and you're vilifying it, and you're listening to your feelings and you're feeling all this stuff come out, you go, Mike, I am absolutely horrified, but I am so damn excited for what life is to bring to me. Amazing. Hold space for both. Like feel it. That's the beauty of being a human being. You are dynamic in nature. You're going to feel all sorts of stuff and have no clue what it is, why you're feeling it. You just do. When I experienced getting shot at for the first time and watching an IED go off and a landmine go off, the emotions that I felt to this day, I can't even put a name to it. I don't even know what I felt. It was the craziest. Can I swear on this podcast? Is that
of course, yes.
Craziest shit. I love how I had to ask permission before I did.
There's some words you need to use.
Yeah, that's right. Well, thank you. It was the craziest shit that to this day I've ever experienced in my life, was being able to experience the spectrum of human emotion in one single event. And through the healing work that I've done, and I'm still continuing to do, I've learned that feelings and states of being need to be evaluated for me through the lens of alignment of where I want to go in life. So is grief bad? Absolutely not. But is me staying in the grief mode and process going to hold me back from progressing and moving forward in my life? And the question I ask myself is, okay, Mike, you're sad, or Mike, you're worried, or, you're angry at yourself. Go ahead and let it out, buddy. Process, do your thing. Is this state of being, you being angry, going to keep you from moving forward? You can sit in this if you want to, but if you want to go out into the world and inspire millions, write another book, coach people, provide and support your, marriage that's coming in the fold in the next couple months, is you being angry about something your dad said to you going to serve you in your higher purpose or in your mission? And the answer is always no. Okay, great. So let's work through it. Let's journal. Let's process. Let's give grace to ourselves. Let's hold that space for us. And then time to move on. And it's going to come back. It's okay. You're a human being. It's going to come back. It's a boomerang. The best thing, though, is just having the tools and the knowledge to be able to say, like, oh, well, there's this part of me that's not the best. That's okay. When I start getting angry, I start getting frustrated. I process. I forgive myself. Ho'oponopono prayer is one of my favorite ones to do. And just say, I love you. I forgive you. I'm sorry. Thank you. You go through that process. And the next thing you know, you're like, okay, cool. Time to move forward.
Mike, I work with several veterans are coming to my mind, and I have such a heart for our veterans. And the suicide rate is very high. You said it earlier too, and I thought, yeah, this is what I've heard. They don't even have words for the emotions. It's not on these nice little emotion sheets that we love handing out.
No.
It's so much more complex that even the English language probably lacks describing what they just experienced in, like I said, just a second maybe of just pouring through their soul. I guess I just want to ask you, what would you say to some of these veterans who are either starting their journey of healing or in mid journey?
Yeah. You're okay.
Mm,
I would start there because any sort of judgment that you have around who you are, what you did, why you did it will further keep you back from the healing process that you need to do to
mm,
put those pieces I had mentioned have been ripped out of you
mm-hmm,
and putting and preventing them from being put back into place. Again,
mm,
there's no right or wrong with the reasons
mm-hmm,
why that happens through the training. And it's not like the military is intentionally doing that. But when you sign up to protect your country
mm-hmm,
and you're given a firearm and you take an oath, and if you're in the Marine Corps, you get this sense of brotherhood where the guy to the left and the right of you is willing to
mm-hmm,
take a bullet for you. It's just code.
mm-hmm,
But when you get out, you expect that same thing to happen.
mm,
You expect the brotherhood. You expect people to have the loyalty and the sense of commitment that you so have deeply ingrained in your body because you know what it's like to meet
mm,
a complete total stranger who
mm-hmm,
immediately would jump on a grenade for you without even knowing for you because you guys are brothers in
mm-hmm,
arms and sisters in arms.
mm-hmm,
The path to healing for anybody that's on that journey transitioning out of the military is to start with, I'm okay
mm.
and I'm going to get better. And
Love it.
this is not to
Mm-hmm,
negate your experiences at all. When I say I am okay, it's I went through what I went through and I'm okay. I'm going to get better every single day with help and support and I'm okay.
mm,
And if you can do that, then you've allowed yourself to walk down the path of healing. And it's not
mm,
going to be easy. It's going to be
mm-hmm,
tough because I'm telling you, I went through it
mm-hmm,
and it was to this day tougher than being in two tours of Iraq. I would have rather
mm.
gone back to Iraq a third time than go through therapy like I did for 6 months. It
I
was
hear you.
crazy. It was,
Yeah.
oh, it's just wild. Yeah. I was like,
Mm,
never want to see this person again. Like send me back to Iraq. I can play in the sandbox for 7 months, but putting me in a room with somebody and asking me them questions about how I feel,
mm-hmm.
no way.
What made you stay in it?
Hope,
Mm,
the fact that I was going to be okay and I was going to be better and I was committed to that.
mm,
In 2010, 4 years after I got out, I had felt so low. I was drinking a lot, using a lot of cannabis, eating a lot of fast food, but that's not solely because I was depressed. It's mostly because I
mm,
was playing football at the time. I had to gain weight, but it was
mm-hmm,
emotional eating was involved in that too.
mm-hmm,
And I was in my mom's basement and I went upstairs to my kitchen and I decided that I didn't want to be here anymore
mm,
and I wanted to take my life.
mm,
And when you get to that place, it is really scary and it
mm-hmm,
is dark and it is a place where you go and you don't know how you got there. You just know you're there. And after that day, when I heard the voice of God speak to me as I picked up a knife in my kitchen and tell me that my job here on earth was not over, it was far from over. And I had a lot more to do in my life and I needed to learn how to love and trust.
mm,
Now, I could have said no to that voice, but I didn't.
mm-hmm,
Instead, I believed that that voice was real.
mm,
I believed the presence that I felt in that day in December on a Wednesday,
mm,
that everything in that kitchen was light and love.
mm,
And I crumbled to the ground and I cried for about 3 hours.
mm,
And I made a vow to myself. And the vow was never again will I ever be this low in
mm,
my life. And so I had hope that life was going to
mm,
get better for me. And I was committed to pain. I was committed to healing. I was committed to learning things I didn't know. I was committed to tough conversations with myself and the people around me. And I was committed to learning that I'm imperfect, but I'm
mm,
also perfect at the same time.
Mm,
And if I could embrace that journey, I could go really far in life.
mm,
Because by then it was like, how is it possible that we could fully know ourselves in every
mm,
aspect?
mm,
If we already knew ourselves in everything, in every single aspect possible, life would
mm,
be boring.
mhm, mm.
And
Wow.
the hope for me, and still to this day, is like, I know what I know now, and I can't wait to know more.
Mm.
And that's what kept me going.
Golly, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing it, and
Mm.
thank you for sticking around. I wouldn't have gotten to meet you.
I wouldn't have gotten to meet me too.
Yeah, you wouldn't have gotten to meet yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Mm.
and what
It's
a
beautiful.
gift.
Thank you, Heather.
One of the things I hear a lot of the veterans talking about is the lack of purpose. I see it
Yeah.
disorienting them because I think it's probably pretty clear purpose in the military. I have never served, so I can't speak to it like you can, but I would imagine that purpose is pretty clear. You have your mission, your agenda, and your people, and you know what the goal is. One of the things I hear them, and I think this goes to what you just said about hope, when I've asked them to describe the despair that I can hear is leading them to that dark moment, they just say, oh, Head, I can't figure out my purpose. And I just say, I'm going to stay in it with you until you do, because there is a purpose on the other side. And it's okay that you don't know yet. I love that you started with it's okay. I think that's what I would add. Probably it's okay that you don't know yet.
Yeah.
But I want to just see if you would speak to that heartache of and disorientation of the lack of purpose they feel on the other side of the military as a civilian.
Well, anybody who's listening, you've walked in your house late at night to go grab something from the fridge and you don't know where the light switch is on, and you run into a bunch of things. You stub your toe, knock your head on something. You're trying not to wake up your kids or your baby or the dog's barking. And you go, I have no clue where the hell I am in my own house because it's so dark. Kind of feels like that. You're
Mm,
hoping someday you find the fridge, the light turns on, you can get what you want to eat.
mm-hmm,
But when you don't have purpose after the military, it feels like you're walking in your kitchen that never ends, just looking for the fridge in hopes that you can have something to eat.
mm,
It's a long walk for all of us
mm-hmm,
that have done that.
mm-hmm,
It's a long walk.
mm-hmm,
For a lot of folks in the military, and I'll speak from my experience, when you get into the military, they immediately tell you you are not an individual, you are part of a unit. You are a cog in the machine. And it is from very early on, it is not about me, it's about we. The unit, the mission comes first before troop welfare. Mission first, you accomplish the mission, and then troop welfare is second. That means your own needs and everybody else's needs go out the fucking window until you do your job. And you have no choice but to buy into that.
mm,
Why? Because you signed a contract for 4 years. You took an oath to defend this country against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
mm,
You're giving your life for 4 years. You are a rank on one side, or excuse me, you are your branch of service on one side and your name on the last side, and your rank is on your collar, depending what branch you are. So the full immersion and the embodiment for military veterans is, I either got to be all in on this or my
mm-hmm,
life's going to be really freaking difficult if I
mm-hmm,
don't abide.
mm-hmm,
The sooner you abide and make it about the team, the unit, your country, it creates a connection to the bigger mission, the bigger
mm-hmm,
why. I have never in my years till recently when I reconnected with God felt like I was ever connected to something bigger than myself
mm-hmm,
since the military. It was very hard for me. I looked high and low. I was like part of this community and I was like, okay, this feels kind of good, but like still didn't get that juice.
mm-hmm,
Because Heather, there's a high to it.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, man, I am a US Marine. There's 50 US Marines with us. We all have M16s. We're in full combat gear. We're going into Iraq and we're like, America, fuck yeah. And like, we're all willing to die for each other. Who's with me?
Yeah. Yeah.
And everybody's like, yeah, I'm in the same boat, brother. Like, same
Yeah.
stuff with you. And you're like, cool.
Hoorah.
Yeah, let's do this shit.
Yeah.
And then you get out and then you're like Jerry Maguire. That scene where he's like, I'm leaving this place. Who's coming with me? Silence.
Yeah.
Nobody.
Yeah.
And so when you're so used to that buy-in because you're part of the
Mm-hmm.
organization and the agency, and then you get out of the military and you leave
Mm-hmm.
and you go, Jerry Maguire, like, hey man, you want to come
Mm-hmm.
with me? And everybody's like, no, dude, they're 3 square meals a day. I get an allowance. I'm going to go
Mm-hmm.
back overseas in Iraq and sit in an air conditioned room and make some
Mm-hmm.
combat pay. And like, I got a wife and a kid on the way and I only got to do 7 months. I'm
Mm-hmm.
kind of staying, man.
Yeah.
But when you leave that,
Mm-hmm.
you're Jerry Maguire. Now what? You're in that
Mm-hmm.
kitchen trying to find the fridge. Now what?
Mm-hmm.
So for a lot of military veterans, they just want to feel like they belong and they're valued.
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
problem is, and this is in my experience, is that veterans have an expectation, and I know I did at least, that the purpose that they're going to find after the service is going to be as grandiose as the purpose they had when they were in the service.
Mm-hmm.
It is very difficult to replicate an honor as high as serving your country and putting your life on the line. It is
Mm-hmm.
very difficult.
Mm-hmm. I see that.
First responders,
Mm-hmm.
people who are in paramilitary or military organizations, you guys get that.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get out and you're like, I got to find something that's on the same scale as serving America, your expectations are going to be, you're going to disappoint yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I always found that for me, it wasn't trying to find the next big thing. It was just trying to find the next thing.
Mm.
What's the next thing that I could do to give myself some life? For me,
Mm-hmm.
it was writing. And then I
Mm.
worked at a veteran, nonprofit. And then I did that. And then I went back and I wanted to start my own agency. So I did that. And then I
Mm-hmm.
worked at a tech company and I was helping other people. For me, it always came back to helping people. It didn't matter
Mm.
what shape or size it was. I just liked helping people.
Mm.
And I get a lot of joy out of that.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me was the next thing.
Mm.
So if you're out there right now as a military veteran, you know somebody that's in the military and they're going through that, just know that their journey, because they haven't learned that from their transition out. And
Mm-hmm.
trust me, I'm speaking about like 15 plus years ago where I was trying to figure out 18 years ago, I got out of the military.
Mm-hmm.
So it's changed a lot and it's gotten a lot better. But
Mm-hmm.
just remember that when you serve and honor as high as your country,
Mm-hmm.
more than likely you're trying to find something that feels that good. That's why sports athletes and military veterans have a lot of commonalities in that. When you play in the NBA and you play in the NFL and you win a Super Bowl,
Mm-hmm.
you can't replicate that feeling out in
Mm-hmm.
civilian society.
Mm-hmm.
So to wrap this up here, just remember, if you're a military veteran, you're looking for your next thing, it's better for you to just look for your next thing and not look
Mm-hmm.
for the thing that you think is going to carry you the rest of your life, because you served and did something that less than 1% of the country will
Mm-hmm.
ever do in their
Mm-hmm.
life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Love that. And I also love that because it was the thought that hit me as well. You found your higher purpose, higher
Yeah.
calling.
Mm.
Can you share a little bit more about that? Because I think that is such a valuable lifeline
Yeah.
for all of humanity. And my faith is important to me, and I know it is to you as well. And it's so sacred. I don't like to touch it because it's like, I don't like to touch the glory of each human and how they
Yeah.
engage with their faith. I don't think there's any one face to it. I think it's as unique as the fingerprints we hold. And
Yeah.
so I always want to give honor to that and just say, what does your faith mean to you?
Man, I got to tell you right now, me and the big guy upstairs, we have gone to We've thrown bows at each other. We've gone through rounds.
Yeah.
Man, I love me some God. I'll tell you that much. And the thing about God to me is not from a religious context. It's God is from the aspect of the unexplainable, the magic that is around us. I watched this clip on Instagram and I thought it was so beautifully put that, you know, the church and other religious organizations describe God as one way, right? And
Mm-hmm.
the path through salvation is through that.
Mm-hmm.
And this comedian said the best analogy for God was actually the road manager for AC/DC. And he said, God is the blanket that we put over the mystery of life.
Mm. Mm.
And I go, God is the blanket that we put. And I was like, that is freaking genius.
Mm.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
And I share that because every single day I wake up and I realize that God saved me from myself.
Mm.
And the mystery that is the blanket
Mm-hmm.
was telling me, if you trust me, if you go where I'm asking you to go, life will work out for you.
Mm.
And as a stubborn human being who was a combat veteran at 23 years old and thought I
Mm-hmm.
was like fucking invincible because like I didn't die in combat, like, are you not entertained? I come home and I got smacked in the face with
Mm.
transition reality and I was looking for hope.
Mm.
And my faith in God has spanned 2 decades. In times when I needed him the most, he was there.
Mm.
And there were times where I thought he left me completely.
Mm.
And I would curse him out.
Mm-hmm.
I would yell at him. I would tell him he was a big old steaming pile of you know what. And then he would show me in all of his glory how real he was.
Mm.
And it was always done through the healing of conversations, the
Mm.
people that came into my life at the right moment at the right time.
Mm.
The synchronicities and the magic of life too started showing up more. And I was like, is this how God works? Like, if I just cuss
Mm.
at him, he's just gonna like give me all the shit that I've ever wanted? Like, okay. And no, that's not what was being communicated to me. The point is that it was about faith and having trust.
Mm.
And God in my healing journey has always been there for me, no matter how many times I was angry at him, no matter how many times I wanted to just scream at him.
Mm-hmm.
And I find myself every single day so thankful and just so grateful of how I just ended up here.
Mm.
I'm sitting in this house. My fiance's in the next room over doing her business. I live in Arizona. It's
Mm.
raining outside, which is like a rarity for those who've been to the desert. And I'm going, this is the best day I've ever had in my life.
Mm.
And the only way I've ever gotten that was total surrender and true faith in the mystery that is the blanket called God.
Mm.
And for me, it's important for me at least to recognize that God is in each and every single one of us.
Mm.
And we are all an extension of God's divine magic and his mystery. And he's made us a certain way for us to learn the lessons that we need to learn in this lifetime. That's my belief.
Mm.
School of life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I always
Mm.
found that the more I allowed to learn,
Mm-hmm.
the more I was allowed to love
Mm.
and have grace,
Mm-hmm.
and then have grace for other people,
Mm-hmm.
and even have grace for my triggers,
Mm.
my traumas, my unhealed, parts of myself.
Mm-hmm.
If I didn't have that relationship with God, those would be vilified. Those would
Mm-hmm.
create separation. And then I would be like, look what you did to me.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of saying, oh, this is what you did to me. Okay, I got it.
Mm-hmm.
I can look at it two different ways. And I always allow myself to listen to what's being said to me.
Mm.
And it's so important for me in my relationship with God to listen first.
Mm-hmm.
And if
Mm-hmm.
you really get to know me, which you have, I talk a lot and I like talking. I'm Italian. All right. And that's a label in itself, but it's a good label. I like it. The thing is I've also learned at the same time to listen.
Mm.
And to me, God is about listening,
Mm-hmm.
and it's about love, and it's about being okay with where you're at
Mm-hmm.
and allowing whatever you think God is to you, source, universe, spirit, whatever label you'd like to put on, whatever higher power.
Mm-hmm.
Allow that presence and that energy in your life to just come and be in it with you.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you feel that presence and you embody it, to feel love coursing through your whole entire body is the most overwhelming feeling I have ever felt. But it is also the feeling that gives me life.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I want to learn more about that.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you got to be careful what you ask for, because like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, you want to really learn how to love yourself? I'm going to show you some really icky parts that you're probably not going to like. And before I used to be really just angry with those parts
Mm.
until I started recognizing that if I let God enter into my life, I can love those parts
Mm.
because that magic, that energy is all around me, and it's
Mm.
nurturing, but it's also structured.
Mm-hmm.
It's divine, it's powerful, it's giving, it's everlasting, it's ever expansive. And the more I try to explain it, the more that I'm like, I don't even know what the hell I'm talking about. It sounds like I'm just like, it's just,
Yeah.
God has just played such an integral part of my life and still does
Mm-hmm.
because of everything I have. And I made it out the other side of that healing journey in my life
Mm-hmm.
because I had nowhere to go but up.
Oh, it's beautiful. Thank
Yeah.
you. I'm so glad I asked. And I believe, just to keep it simple for our listeners, God is love. And
Yeah.
everything you said, Mike, is showing the love of God reaching out. And I tell people who have been hurt by religion or misunderstood in different faith circles or whatever, if it's not loving, it's not God.
Mm.
It's very, very simple. And I think about that moment when you found God in that kitchen. I can just see God just reaching in and removing that knife and saying, I
Yeah.
love you, Mike, and I'm
Yeah.
going to help you love you. And together, we're going to love you through this. And I often think about God being this presence that says, join me in loving you, Heather,
Yeah.
because we're not capable of doing it ourselves, right? Something got broke. And to your point, it's life and it's living to learn this connection to love that we all have it buried deep within us. And we
Mhm.
know it when we see it. We know it when we feel it. But oh, I fall so short of feeling that love on a consistent basis. And how much, I mean, isn't that our journey for the rest of our life till we take our last breath, is to love ourselves and love others? My faith is
Yeah.
very simple: love God, love people. And as I love people, I get to be in that mix too. But
Yeah.
oftentimes we say, no, I just have to love others. And I'm like, no, God does not separate out, right? He's to use your words, he's non-dualistic. He's
Yes.
like, I love everyone and everything, and there is no good or bad. There is a sense of, I'm going to love you through this. And love is the power that will
Mhm.
course correct whatever is broken.
Yes. And I love what you said about God is love and love people.
Mm-hmm.
This does not mean, though, that that's it for
Mm-hmm.
anybody
Yes.
listening. It
Yeah.
sounds simple, but it's not, because
Right.
through the path to having God and finding God in your life, you will be presented with challenges and tests along the way
Mm-hmm.
to ask yourself how truly committed you are to that of a life of full unconditional compassion and love for yourself and for other people.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for me, that is something that I am learning every single moment of every single day, is to see how much I can love myself to love other people. Because I think the default for a lot of us, Heather, is we're so focused on giving love or giving
Mm.
value or
Mm-hmm.
providing for other people, we never talk about how willing and how much can we receive
Mm-hmm.
love,
Mm-hmm.
because we think it's selfish to just say, well, what about me? What about all the love I'm receiving? No, I disagree with that completely.
Mm-hmm.
We're always in the giving mode to give to other people. But ask yourself this question: if you allow God to come into your life, how much are you willing to receive the love that's going to be provided in that relationship?
Mm-hmm.
Because that to me was the most powerful reframe when I heard that was, it's not about how much love I give, it's how much can I receive,
Mm. Love that.
give myself. And I still think about it from times. I'm like, did I really love myself a lot today?
Mm.
And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
no, I probably could have done a better job. And that's how I look at my life now. And to me, it's the more I love myself, the more I can make sure that everybody else that I care for in my life and to other people comes from that place of love,
Mm-hmm.
the
Well,
extension of it.
and God can't participate in anything other than love.
Yeah.
God's not
It's
there in
I
hate
love
and
that.
bitterness,
Yeah.
So the more we choose to have that connection with loving ourselves, we are connecting with God, higher power, source, universe, again, whatever anyone wants to call it. I believe it's such a powerful force out there. I never want to put it in constraints that's just man-made religion.
Yeah. Mm. So good.
Gosh, Mike, I could talk to you quite a while. As we wrap up, here's the question I like to ask everybody's on my show. What are some of your morning rituals?
Oh, morning rituals.
Mm-hmm.
I did prepare for this as part of the podcast episode, so I'm glad you asked me. Morning rituals. So when I was in the mode of hustle and grind, it was meditation, journal, affirmations in the mirror, and then just go crush it at the gym. And then I was like, look at me, high achiever. It is
Many
so
of
funny.
we can all relate. I have a lot of high
Ice bath,
achieving listeners.
sauna. Yeah, right.
Yes.
Like that was me, right? And I was
Yes.
into that. And like, and seriously, I do love that shit. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
great. Like I love the sauna. It's amazing. The season of life that I'm in now is actually grace. And so it's
Mm.
so timely because I turned 40 in November. And I said, is this all necessary, this morning routine that I have? Is it necessary
Mm.
for me to get that pumped up and excited about my life? That I
Mm.
need to do all this shit? And so I asked myself that question when I turned 40, and I was like, I had the best 40th birthday. It was amazing. And I look at myself the next day and I'm like, holy shit, am I 40? And I was like, what am I really striving for? Like,
Mm.
why am I doing all of this?
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that none of this stuff that I was doing was actually getting me to feel more enthusiastic about my day.
Mm.
And I was doing the routine for the wrong reasons.
Mm.
The routine
Mm-hmm.
should be to enhance what you're already feeling in your
Mm-hmm.
day to get you more in a
Mm-hmm.
state of flow. And
Yeah.
so I love that. I fucking hate the ice bath. Love the sauna. Don't really care for the love writing, love journaling. My
Yeah.
morning routines now consist of going to the gym. And what I do is,
Mm.
because I'm one of those people that is, how do I put this? If you're familiar with Ayurvedic medicine, there's these personality types that they have, and it's called Kapha and Pitta. And
Mm.
Kapha energies are more of like the earth, the
Mm.
grounding. They're kind of like escaping me a little bit. I know I'm rambling a little bit, but I have a point to all this. Kapha energies are kind of like more, they're like the elephants. They're
Mm.
slow, but they progress and they're grounded and they're like stable.
Mm.
Pitta energies are like fire energies, illuminate the path, high achievers. And it's really interesting for anybody who wants to read this. Like I'm probably messing this up now, but like read about
Mm.
doshas in Ayurvedic medicine is absolutely mind blowing. And when I started learning about my dosha, I'm a kapha energy. I started recognizing that for me, I move a little bit slower than
Mm.
my fiance, who's a fire energy type. So she's like, let's go, hurry up, like crush it. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm in no rush to start my day. So my day is to be in balance. I do the opposite. So what
Mm.
I do is, first thing I do is I get up and I go right
Mm-hmm.
to the gym. I don't
Mm.
negotiate with myself. I throw my
Mm-hmm.
clothes on. I don't think about like sitting around my house. I just go
Mm-hmm.
and I work out and go to the gym. and then I go get coffee afterwards.
Mm.
And then when I go get coffee, I sit in my car for 5 minutes and I take the sip of the coffee and I go, it is going to be a good day.
Mm.
And then I go right into work around 8:39 at my desk
Mm-hmm.
and I work.
Mm.
And that morning routine is so funny because it's like not optimized. It's like probably science people in the research field probably hating me for saying this because like, they have all their research. But
Mm-hmm.
that's for me what's been working so far because the
Mm.
state of flow that I want to achieve is through gratitude. And I don't negotiate myself with
Mm.
myself when it comes to working out because it's
Mm.
important to me. And I go
Mm-hmm.
every day. Um, and that morning routine to me is the biggest practice is I find gratitude at the gym.
Mm.
I like to socialize too. So I'll see a couple people there and I talk to them for a little bit. But the goal is for me is the moment you wake up, appreciate what you're doing, get to the
Mm-hmm.
gym, drink coffee, sit and just be grateful for how good of a day this is going to be and visualize
Mm.
it and go to work.
Love it. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. I love it. Oh, I love it. Love it. Love
You
it.
should try it. I mean, it's not prescribed. This is not endorsed by Andrew Huberman. It's just, it's just mine.
Well, your
Yeah.
focus though is coming from within again. It's not
Mhm.
the actual of what you're doing.
Yes.
It's how you're doing it and the spirit of which you're showing up with it. And I think that's what I believe because I love your two. I won't say the words right, but I heard earth and fire.
Yeah.
And I have both. I'm noticing that some days I have the earth and then some days I have the fire. And that confused me for a long time till I
Mhm.
realized, oh, yeah, Monday I've got to ease more into it, but I got to bring the fire. To
That's right.
counterbalance me, I
Yeah.
hire a trainer at 6:45 every
Yeah.
Monday morning to get out there, do boxing and have fun. And it's a wonderful trainer that I love. But it's that I was like, wow, I didn't realize I had both. And you've described it so well. And then I noticed a Tuesday morning, okay, I get to relax a little bit. I kind of earned it. And then I'm going to work out a
Mhm.
little later because, so you're watching a little bit of what you need. And I just love the fact that you address the fact that it's about the spirit of how you show up in this world.
Yeah, and I think something that you said that I think is so great is that you are noticing, I think what we've been talking about today is the non-duality
Yeah.
approach. Is like
Yeah.
you can be earth and fire. Like I get jacked up too. Like I get super hyped for stuff. Like it
Mm-hmm.
it takes me personally more energy to get hyped up.
Yeah.
Like I got to motivate myself because like a lot of times I'm this.
Yeah.
You put me in a social setting and you put me in like a networking event or like
Mm-hmm.
the last weekend for me, which was like 4 days of events, I was in my zone. I was like, I'm around people, like I'm talking, like I'm feeling just energy pouring into me.
Yeah.
And I crashed so hard last night on the couch, but I was like happy. I was just like, man, this is great. But put me out behind a desk and like I have to do this every single day for like 9, 10 hour days or 6 hours at a time or concentrated work. I
Mm-hmm.
have to get myself more energized to do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
One thing I did forget to mention, it's not a morning routine. It's a daily commitment that I make to
Mm.
myself is reading.
Mm.
I think reading's super important
Mm-hmm.
for anybody who's need clarity of answers and also to help you learn how to think better.
Mm-hmm.
With reading, I'm reading 10 pages. I commit myself to that. If I want to read more, I read more. I don't beat myself up over it. And I think that's the really important thing with these rituals is
Mm-hmm.
like in these routines, we have to be
Yes.
careful about that. And so I don't beat myself up if I miss the gym.
Mm-hmm.
I go back to the place of grace and
Mm-hmm.
compassion. I go, hey, Mike, you didn't make it to the gym today. Okay. Can you not be hard on yourself? Can you go tomorrow?
Mm.
Yes. And then I
Wow.
recommit myself to, okay, you need to go to the gym.
Mm. That's
And
beautiful.
yeah, so reading and then the recommitment to your goals, if you miss it, is really
Mm-hmm.
important too. And so
Mm.
those are two things I wanted to add on that.
Mike, where can people find you? Where can they hire
Yeah.
you for your services? What are you offering? Let's tell
Yeah.
people where they can keep this conversation going if they like what they're hearing.
Well, so nice of you to spotlight that. Thank you.
Of course.
Primary channel for me is Instagram. So you can find me at Mike.Liguori, Liguori. If you're interested in working with me, there are two ways to do that. If you're interested in starting a podcast, which we didn't get to really talk a whole lot about, but let me tell you, I got a lot of thoughts about the podcast space. I love podcasting. It's amazing. If you haven't started one, this is your sign to do it. You can work with me and my team at liveyourtruth.media. That's our website. We've been around for 5 years now, which has been great. We've worked with some amazing brands. I have a wonderful team, and I've worked with a lot of people in the personal development and health and wellness space. Any industry is welcome to me. So if you're interested in starting your podcast, you can find me there. And then I would say, finally, the last thing is, if the second way you can work with me is that if you're looking right now to break free of the constraints that you're coming across in your life, if you're looking to find healing, find a way to not be so hard on yourself, find a way for you to get to the other side of it, achieve freedom in your life, please reach out to me on Instagram. More than happy to talk with you. And I will tell you this, Heather is a wonderful coach as well. So you got two great options at the end of this episode. But of course, Heather's a wonderful coach and somebody that I've enjoyed interviewing on my podcast as well. And if you feel called to work with me or her, like, you can find me on Instagram, and obviously you can find Heather here. Yes.
Thank you, Mike. Yes. And I think this is where we're united, as we are cheering everyone on.
That's right.
We believe in you. And if you don't have the hope, don't worry. It's coming, and we're holding it with you and for you. Even if it's just for a little bit, you just borrow it from us, because we believe in you. And we believe that everything that you're about, and like the name of my podcast and my book, there's a life that only you're made for. And I believe in that. And I know Mike does too. So thank you so much for joining us, Mike. Such a pleasure having you.
Oh, thanks, Heather. This was great. I love it. I don't really get to do a lot of podcast interviews, so when I do, it's always good. It's so much fun.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We had such a great time today, and obviously we are all stepping into this life that we're made for, but isn't it nice to have a little bit of support along the way? If you want to find out more about the life that you're made for, come find me at heatherpenny.com. Go ahead and subscribe, give us a review. That really helps us out and helps spread the word. You get to step into the life that you're made for. Cheering you on.